announcement.
Honorable members, we have in our midst today the presence of Mr. Joseph Christian Leopold, Chairperson of the Rodrigues Regional Assembly. The Chairperson, accompanied by the clerk and 2 other staff members, are presently on official visit in Mauritius for benchmarking of the implementation of e-Parliament for the Rodrigues Regional Assembly. On behalf of honorable members and in my own name, I extend a warm welcome to the chairperson and members of his delegation, and I wish them a fruitful mission and a pleasant stay in Mauritius. I thank you.
Papers have been laid. Questions?
Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, my question is addressed to the Honourable Prime Minister, whether in regard to registration of electors by the Electoral Commission, he will state if consideration will be given for the introduction of proposed amendments to the existing legislation aiming at A, restricting the right to registration to those Commonwealth citizens having resided in Mauritius for a minimum of 5 years, B, moving to a continuous register of voters and keeping same open for registration until 2 weeks prior to election date and enabling online registration, C, codifying the circumstances whereby a person may be removed from the electoral register, and D, securing a state-of-the-art information technology system and audit trail to maintain the integrity of the computerized database of electors.
Mr. Speaker, sir, as the House is aware, the Constitution guarantees the voting right of every eligible citizen, provided he or she is duly registered as an elector in a particular constituency. The qualifications and registration of electors are governed by the provisions of sections 42, 43, and 44 of the Constitution and Part 2 of the Representation of the People Act. The qualifications of electors are laid down in section 42 of the Constitution as follows, and I quote, Section 1, subsection 1, a person shall be entitled to be registered as an elector if, and shall not be so entitled unless A, he is a Commonwealth citizen of not less than the age of 18 years, and B, either he has resided in Mauritius for a period of not less than 2 years immediately before such date as may be prescribed by Parliament, or he is domiciled in Mauritius and is resident there on the prescribed date. 2, no person shall be entitled to be registered as an elector, A, in more than one constituency, or B, in any constituency in which he is not resident on the prescribed date, unquote. Mr. Speaker, sir, the prescribed date is the 1st of January in any year, and this is provided for in section 4A of the Representation of the People Act. The prescribed date is therefore the qualifying date for the purpose of determining the residence of any person in respect of the register to be compiled in any year. Section 4 of the Representation of the People Act provides the following with regard to compilation of registers of electors, and I quote, subsection 1, every year there shall be compiled for every electoral area a register of persons entitled to be registered as electors for that electoral area. Subsection 2, no person shall be registered as an elector in any year unless he has attained or will have attained the age of 18 on 15th August in that year. Subsection 3. Every register compiled in a year shall, subject to Section 39, come into force on 16th August in that year and shall remain in force until the register next compiled comes into force, unquote. It should also be brought out that Section 44, subsection 2 of the Constitution provides that, and I quote, no person shall vote at any election for any constituency who is not registered as an elector in that constituency, unquote. Mr. Speaker, sir, in order to give effect to the provisions of the Constitution and the Representation of the People Act, every year the Office of the Electoral Commissioner compiles a new register of electors in accordance with the provisions of Part 2 of the Representation of the People Act. The exercise for the registration of electors is carried out in two distinct phases. First, a house-to-house inquiry is carried out in the beginning of the year, and second, a countrywide registration of electors is carried out in various registration centers in the month of May. For the first phase, that is the house-to-house inquiry, the Office of the Electoral Commissioner invites, by way of a circular letter, applications from serving public officers who are willing to work as assistant registration officers. The appointment of these assistant registration officers is published in the Government Gazette. Prior to the start of the house-to-house inquiry, the registration officers prepare lists of assistant registration officers for each constituency, generally referred to as canvassers, who would assist them during the said inquiry. Canvassers are usually allocated around 200 households and work under the supervision of principal canvassers, who in turn are monitored by the chief canvassers. Officers who worked for the previous exercise are selected only if the inquiry was carried out to the satisfaction of the registration officer. The lists of selected assistant registration officers for each constituency are submitted to the Electoral Supervisory Commission for approval by the Electoral Commissioner and subsequently to the Secretary to Cabinet and Head of Civil Service, who issues the appointment letters. During the house-to-house inquiry, each householder is required by law to furnish to the canvasser the names of all adult citizens and persons who would have attained the age of 18 on the 15th of August of the year, residing in his or her household. The registration officer thereafter prepares a list of all persons who appear to him or her to be qualified to be registered as electors in his/her constituency, based on the elector's residence as at the prescribed date and the age qualification. The qualification of such electors is determined by the registration officer on the basis of information obtained during the house-to-house inquiry and or any other information in his possession. That list would constitute the electors' list for that particular constituency. The electors' lists of all the 20...
Minister is not answering any of the questions that I've asked. Completely beside the point. It is a very serious matter. Prime Minister, perhaps deal with the questions. Time is going.
Mr. Speaker, sir.
I have always, let me rule, Prime Minister. I have always told you that, I have repeatedly told you that the chair has no control of a reply from the executive. So, and you keep on making point of order on that point. No, there's no problem. This is the problem. The problem is with you. Please continue.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir, this is with regard to the registration of electors by the Electoral Commission. So I must at least say a few words about this process of the registration of the electors. And then, of course, obviously, I will be answering your question. But you raise a point of order. I must also be able to explain. But you should have looked at the time yourself before raising the point of order instead of wasting the time.
Please, on both sides of the House, this is why I intervene so that there is no debate on this point. Prime Minister, continue.
Yeah. So, so I was saying that the list would constitute the electors' list for that particular constituency. The electors' lists of all the 21 constituencies are then published and made available for inspection by the general public at the office of the Electoral Commissioner and in registration centers between the 16th and 30th of May every year. The list of the registration centers is published in the Gazette and is also posted on the website of the office of the Electoral Commissioner. Mr. Speaker, sir, the publication of the electors' list leads to the second phase of the registration exercise, during which a wide sensitization program is carried out in all media outlets, including television and radios, to encourage citizens to verify whether their names appear on the list, on the electors' list. In the event that their names do not appear on the said list, they have the possibility to present a claim to the Assistant Registration Officer to be registered as an elector. The Office of the Electoral Commissioner also reaches out to the general public through its Facebook page and its website. Moreover, a search engine is available on the website of the Office of the Electoral Commissioner, whereby a person can, through his national identity card number, verify whether his or her name is on the electors' list. In collaboration with mobile phone operators, a short message service with similar facilities is also made available on cell phones. A list of persons known as list of claimants having submitted claims to the Assistant Registration Officer to be registered as electors is published by the Registration Officer not later than 10th of June. After the publication of the lists, any person may object to the registration of a person as an elector by sending a notice of objection to the registration officer. The registration officer, after considering the objections, if any, must then make necessary corrections to the lists so as to compile the final register of electors, which comes into force on the 16th of August every year. Mr. Speaker, sir, in regard to Part A of the question, as I stated earlier, the Constitution confers voting rights upon Commonwealth citizens who satisfy the age and residence criteria laid down in Section 42, subsection 1 of the Constitution. Accordingly, the practice of registering qualified Commonwealth citizens as electors has existed since independence. Similar practice of granting voting rights exists in other Commonwealth countries, including the United Kingdom. For the 2019 general elections, 838 citizens from 22 Commonwealth countries were registered as electors. For the 2014 general elections, the number of Commonwealth citizens registered as electors was 766. These voting rights to qualified Commonwealth nationals are enshrined in our Constitution and are based on the principle of reciprocity. Any attempt at amending these rights should therefore be carefully examined. Mr. Speaker, sir, in December 2015, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, who was then Deputy Prime Minister, was himself chairing the Ministerial Committee on Electoral Reform. He even presented a first report on the 1st of April 2016 with recommendations on several aspects of our electoral system. He could have seized the opportunity to make recommendations on this particular aspect of registration of Commonwealth citizens residing in Mauritius as electors. Moreover, there is no record of any suggestion or counter-proposal having ever been made by the current Leader of the Opposition following the public consultation exercise on the electoral reform proposals of the government in 2018. Mr. Speaker, sir, in regard to Part B of the question, the present system of registration of electors provides that any person attaining the age of 18 after 15th of August will not be entitled to vote in case elections are held after 16th of August, as her name will not appear on the register until the next registration exercise is completed and takes effect on the 15th of August of the following year. Moreover, the absence of some householders at the time of the canvass and their non-response, despite several attempts by the canvassers thereafter, may result in their names being deleted from the register. In order to overcome these difficulties, consideration may be given to registration of electors being made a continuous process until the date of writ of elections is issued, as recommended by the Sachs Commission. However, we do not consider it advisable to address such issues in a piecemeal and isolated manner. We would prefer a more holistic approach that would encompass other fundamental changes needed to our electoral system and to which the government stands committed. Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to Part C of the question, Sections 42 and 43 of the Constitution make express provisions for qualifications and disqualifications of electors. In addition, the Representation of the People Act comprehensively codifies in Part 2 thereof the registration of electors, thereby providing that if any person does not qualify to be registered, his name will be deleted accordingly. Provision is also made under Section 10 of the Representation of the People Act that any person who claims to be entitled to be registered as an elector and his name is not already entered on the electors list for the electoral area in which he claims to be registered may appear before the registration officer of the constituency in which he claims to be registered as an elector and presents his claim to be registered. If the registration officer does not register the person as an elector, that person has a right of appeal under Section 36, subsection 1 of the Representation of the People Act before a judge in chambers against such decision of the registration officer. Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to Part D of the question, I am informed that the State Informatics Limited has been the IT solution provider of the Office of the Electoral Commissioner since 1993. SIL had developed an Oracle-based computerized system for the Office of the Electoral Commissioner. In 1993, a contract was awarded to SIL for the design and development of an Oracle-based application software. However, as from year 2014, when the new PCs with Windows 7 were installed on the said operating software, it was observed that the application was not working properly. In these circumstances, the Office of the Electoral Commissioner had requested a business solution from SIL. An updated business proposal dated 16th of February 2016 was submitted by SIL for the upgrading of the applications to Java J2EE technology, to build and deploy a web-based application and use new technologies for an enhanced experience. In a letter dated 29 February 2016, the Central Informatics Bureau strongly supported the need to invest in latest technologies so as to improve end-user operations and to take advantage of new features and services. Following a due diligence report dated 18th of May 2016, involving various stakeholders, namely the Office of the Electoral Commissioner, the Central Informatics Bureau, the IT Security Unit and Central Informatics Systems Division of the Ministry of Information, Technology and Communication and Innovation, the Due Diligence Committee determined that the business proposal of SIL be retained for the upgrading of the Office of the Electoral Commissioner application using J2EE technologies, and that the computerized system be redesigned as is. Presently, the Office of the Electoral Commissioner is still using the application J2EE technologies, which already has an inbuilt security system. In fact, the software is installed on a secured local area network. The system can only be accessed through a dedicated login and password. The access is based on the individual role of the user. The system is not accessible online. Moreover, an audit trail is available to keep track of any amendments. Mr. Speaker, sir, the present constitutional and legal provisions relating to general elections, including the provisions for the registration of electors, have stood the test of time and served the country well by guaranteeing political and social stability. Since independence, the present electoral system has consistently delivered credible and free and fair elections, acknowledged internationally, and contributed significantly to Mauritius being recognized as a full democracy. However, any suggestion or proposal could be looked into in the context of broader electoral reform.
Suite aux vives inquiétudes de la population et aux anomalies qu'on a découvertes lors des dernières élections, je constate qu'il n'y a aucune volonté politique d'amener des améliorations. Je voudrais, Monsieur le Président, parler premièrement des travailleurs étrangers, qui est une situation relativement nouvelle pour l'île Maurice. Donc nous avons 30 000 travailleurs du Commonwealth à monter, 30 000 à monter à Maurice pour l'instant. Des pays comme l'Inde, les Seychelles, l'Afrique du Sud, les Maldives, le Sri Lanka, tous, Monsieur le Président, ils ne laissent pas les étrangers voter dans leurs élections générales. Pourquoi donc est-ce que Maurice, puisque nous avons des majorités quelquefois très très restreintes dans chaque circonscription, pourquoi est-ce que l'île Maurice, nous ne suivons pas l'exemple, par exemple, de l'Inde et de ces autres pays?
Monsieur le Président, tout d'abord, laissez-moi dire que les inquiétudes sont plutôt de la part de l'opposition, pas de la population. Les anomalies, c'est les partis de l'opposition, d'ailleurs, qui ont entré des pétitions en Cour suprême pour aller contester et pour aller faire toutes sortes d'allégations. Et même, je dirais, aller faire des allégations contre une institution indépendante, comme la commission électorale et le Electoral Supervisory Commission, qui sont des institutions, d'ailleurs, qui ont contribué énormément à faire que l'île Maurice soit reconnue, non seulement comme un pays démocratique, mais que le processus électoral qui est adopté est reconnu largement dans le monde, et surtout que le fait qu'il y a pas mal de pays qui s'inspirent aussi, qui veulent s'inspirer de notre système. Donc, ne venez pas dire que les inquiétudes, les anomalies, d'ailleurs nous avons eu la preuve, combien de pétitions qui ont été purement et rejetées par la Cour, parce que les allégations sont frivoles. Mais l'honorable leader de l'opposition parle des pays qui ont maintenant, allons dire, légiféré pour que les citoyens du Commonwealth ne puissent pas voter. Mais ils font souvent référence à l'Angleterre. Mais l'Angleterre, actuellement, laisse et donne la possibilité aux citoyens du Commonwealth de pouvoir voter. Et laissez-moi vous dire, Monsieur le Président, moi-même j'ai fait l'expérience lorsque j'étais étudiant. Il n'y avait même pas de qualification concernant la période de résidence en Angleterre. Le jour que vous atterrissez, le jour que vous êtes là, pour les élections, et non seulement les élections générales, les élections, les local council elections also, we are able to vote, and I have voted in both elections.
Time is almost up. I hope you will give us additional time. Je veux dire, Monsieur le Président, ceci. Nous avons des travailleurs étrangers pauvres qui sont donc sujets à être influencés, sujets à être achetés, sujets peut-être à être même menacés. C'est pour cette raison-là, pour les 30 à 40 000 travailleurs étrangers du Commonwealth qui sont à Maurice, qui sont vulnérables. C'est à cause de cela que je demande le premier. Ce n'est pas l'Angleterre, ici avec 60 millions. Prenez l'Angleterre quand vous convient et l'Inde quand ça vous convient. Là, je vous dis, Monsieur le Président, je dis au Premier ministre, Monsieur le Président, ces travailleurs-là, ils sont vulnérables. Ils peuvent être achetés et vendus. Ils sont dans les meetings souvent. Et c'est pour cette raison-là, Monsieur le Président, que je demande au gouvernement de faire comme moi j'ai mis dans le Local Government Act, que ce soit que les Mauriciens qui puissent voter ou des étrangers avec 5 ans de résidence à Maurice.
Monsieur le Président, je note aussi que lorsque le leader de l'opposition pose des questions, à ce moment-là, il n'y a pas de problème de temps. Il fait des discours de long en large pour pouvoir protéger. Oui, why do you don't apply it yourself and restrain yourself so that we
debate.
Yeah. So let me answer your question.
No debate.
So, Mr. Speaker, sir, when we look at, il est en train de faire toutes sortes aujourd'hui. Encore une fois, des allégations. Les citoyens du Commonwealth qui viennent ici travailler, ils sont des gens pauvres, peuvent être achetés. Hein? Combien ont été achetés qui ont été prouvés par l'opposition? Ils ont fait toutes sortes d'allégations dans leur pétition. Encore une fois, je vais redire. Vous savez, ici, ils peuvent dire n'importe quoi. Sur une caisse de savon, ils peuvent dire n'importe quoi. Mais en Cour suprême, là-bas, ils ne peuvent pas dire n'importe quoi. Parce qu'il y a quelqu'un qui est indépendant. Il y a un juge de la Cour suprême qui vont écouter les arguments, qui vont analyser les preuves et qui vont...
I have a point of order. There are still 2 election petitions which are being debated in court where there are serious allegations that has been made about the role of the Electoral Supervisory Commissioner in the organization. I found it most improper for the Prime Minister today to discuss on a matter which is sub judice. Okay. So the Prime Minister cannot make comments about the conduct
of
the...
the point of order, I think. Okay. So let me rule. He's not discussing any case. Please continue.
Et, comme toujours, l'honorable Tim, comme toujours, il prend des points qui sont sans fondement. Parce que je suis en train de prendre... Je suis en train de parler des...
Order on both sides of the House, please.
Laissez-moi répéter, parce que je crois qu'il est en train de parler, de m'interrompre quand je parle. Il faut qu'il écoute bien. Comme je dis toujours, l'honorable Boutim, soit qu'il ne comprend rien, ou bien il fait des commentaires, il fait des commentaires que pour interrompre. Je suis en train de parler des cas où la Cour a rejeté les pétitions. Ces cas ont été jugés déjà, sans mentionner les cas où ils ont retiré les pétitions, la queue entre les jambes. Ils se sont sauvés. Retirez les pétitions.
Prime Minister, you continue with your replies
Yes.
first.
So, I was to reply to the honourable leader of the opposition. If we look at the number of Commonwealth citizens who have been in the country for years now, 2012, there were 643. 2013, 640. 2014, the date of election, 766. And it was the government of the Labour Party. Well, on the date of the election, the PMSD was kicked out from that alliance. Or you left, I don't know, maybe you left. No. Okay.
Leader of the opposition.
Well,
you cannot do that, leader of the opposition.
let me put
You've
it...
been an acting prime minister. This is the way to behave. Question time. PNQ, this is the way to behave. Please continue.
Bon, mais peut-être qu'il n'y avait pas de la place pour le PMSD dans cette alliance. Mais anyway, donc 766. So what I want to say, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that throughout the years, as I said, since independence, there have been, of course, at that time, maybe probably less Commonwealth citizens, or could be more also. But each time, those people who had registered themselves and who were eligible to register themselves as electors have been voting. I said in my answer, now, I am open to any suggestion, any proposal, and it has to be looked, as I said, in the global context of electoral reform.
Speaker, Mr. Subramanian Krishnan, unfortunately, is no longer here, but he had a different story to tell about Bangladeshi voters. Let me ask the Honourable Prime Minister concerning now the door-to-door canvassing. Dans tous les pays du monde maintenant, ce système-là est aboli. Dans presque tous les pays du monde maintenant, avec la technologie, parce qu'on se repose sur une loi de 1958, Monsieur le Président, qu'il est maintenant important, urgent, de regarder notre loi, moderniser notre loi et faire de sorte qu'aucun Mauricien qui aurait dû avoir le droit de voter en servant de la technologie puisse voter dans les élections. Et c'est pour cette raison que je demande au Premier ministre d'appliquer le rapport de Sachs Commission de 2002. Il était lui-même au présent gouvernement, d'appliquer 20 ans après, d'appliquer ce rapport-là.
Monsieur le Président, moi je dis au contraire, le door-to-door canvassing donne plus de possibilités pour qu'on essaie de capter le maximum de personnes qui sont éligibles pour être enregistrées sur la liste des électeurs, parce que, comme je viens de dire, les canvasseurs, ils auront à peu près 200 households to check whether those people who live in each household, their names are already on the list of electors, if not, to register those who are, of course, eligible, but who can be registered. So I think it is what, if I can call it that way, it is like a personal attention that is being given to each household to register electors. But, of course, with time also, we need to look at all the other new technologies that are available to see to it that we can continue to facilitate the registration of electors. Now, I am informed also that the canvassers, in fact, they visit about 300,000 households every year.
Il a été aboli presque partout. Est-ce que le Premier ministre est au courant que la liste qu'on s'est servi pour 2019 comprend de graves anomalies? Qu'entre 2019 et 2014, il n'y a eu que 4700 nouveaux électeurs, alors qu'un simple référence au nombre de personnes qui sont nées 18 ans avant et le nombre de décès va vous montrer clairement qu'il y a environ 43 000 personnes qui manquent sur cette liste. Et d'ailleurs, la liste de 2020 comprend 20 000 noms additionnels qui n'avaient pas sur la liste de 2019 pour les élections. C'est pour cela, Monsieur le Président, que je demande au Premier ministre de revoir, keep an open mind, s'élever au-dessus du débat politique. Et même si le Premier ministre décide, s'il y a un select comité, Monsieur le Président, je peux vous assurer que l'opposition participera à un select comité pour revoir toute cette question qui doit être au-dessus de la politique politicaille. Ça, 2019-2020. Pas 20 000 personnes en 2020 en plus. 40 000 personnes qui manquent.
What is this style? This is parliamentary democracy.
Le leader de l'opposition fait référence au nombre d'électeurs de 2019, qui est de 941 719, et de 2020, qui est 961 062,
What is this leader of the opposition? Behave yourself. Everything is serious. Not only what you say is serious. A reply is more serious even.
donc qui est au fait, qui est plus. 2020, donc, est plus que 2019. On est d'accord? Oui. Maintenant, si le leader de l'opposition peut consulter sa liste aussi, si on regarde en 1997, nous avons 742 115 électeurs. En 1998, une année après, on fait le même procédé pour enregistrer les électeurs. C'est 739 739. C'est moins. Pas plus, c'est moins. Et si on regarde l'année 2006, 822 406 électeurs. 2006. 2007, 819 179. Encore une fois, c'est moins d'électeurs, une année après. L'année de 2009, 879 897. L'année 2010, où il y a des élections générales, 875 799. Une année après, il y a moins d'électeurs que l'année précédente. Et oui, mais qui était au pouvoir? Qui était là? Qui était là comme gouvernement? Toutes ces années, qui était là comme gouvernement? Et on n'avait rien vu. Toutes ces années, on n'a rien vu. Maintenant, le contraire qui se passe ici, 2019, 2020, il y a une augmentation en termes de nombre d'électeurs. Ils trouvent ça anormal. Hein? C'est comme je dis, c'est le monde à l'envers, Monsieur le Président. Mais anyway, moi par contre, moi comme Premier ministre, lorsque j'ai regardé le nombre au fil des années, bien sûr, cela me concerne. Comment se fait-il qu'en ces années précédentes, il y a eu une diminution en termes d'électeurs? Donc il faut voir, et si il y a des gens qui se sont pas inscrits, ou quelles sont les raisons pour lesquelles on a eu donc une baisse en termes de nombre d'électeurs.
Time over by 7 minutes. Time over by 7 minutes. Prime Minister's question time. Let me announce that PQB 6 to 6 and 6 to 8 have been withdrawn. Honorable Governor Prasad.
B 6